Hey, everybody, welcome to Frequelize This. I'm John,
I'm Rich.
I'm Dave.
and today we're talking about these some albums where we were taking a look at some albums and thinking, oh my goodness, wait, these are 10 years old already. Just sometimes kind of being surprised, especially when you get up into the yonder years or whatever, wherever we are. I don't know. We're
Yeah,
old
I wouldn't say
ish.
yonder years because this started happening back, 10 years ago.
I
Like,
know,
Well,
yeah.
you're
I remember
with your gray
2010
beard here.
realizing Flood by They Might Be Giants is 20 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, they
And
tell you in the first track, but I mean, it's still like, what the heck? How did this happen?
right.
Yeah.
I guess it's possible for a 21-year-old to be kind of surprised at some album that they listened to when they were 11 or something being 10. But anyway, so we just we're going to go around the circle here on some albums, great albums, not necessarily our favorites, but albums that just sort of jumped out at us like, wow, that's 10 years old. So we'll start with Dave. What do you got, Dave?
All right. Well, the first one that jumped out at me was because this was the first album of this particular band that when I started getting into them. So the band is Riverside, uh, Polish progressive rock band, kind of heavy at times. Not really, I wouldn't say prog metal, but they have moments, a
Mhm.
lot of atmospherics in their music and so forth. But yeah, the 10-year-old album, Shrine of New Generation Slaves. I still think it's actually in the Riverside catalog, still probably one of their best, but it was the first
Yeah.
album of theirs that I got into and started listening to, and it grabbed me, pulled me in. And yeah, it's just one of those ones where it's a great atmospheric, kind of nice heavy guitars at times. They kind of moved away. What I found out later as I dug into their catalog further is you got like more Floyd-like influences earlier in the catalog. This one heavies it up just a bit. But yeah, it's amazing to me that this is a 10-year-old album. So there it is. So my first selection is Riverside, Shrine of a New Generation Slaves. I don't know why I can't say that.
It's an
There's like
awkward,
7 words in there, so that's okay.
It
yeah,
is,
Yeah.
it is.
it's an
And
awkward
and fun to
title,
start with a Polish album, right?
Yeah,
Oh, that's
of
on brand.
course.
Um,
That is on brand.
yeah. Well, I'm gonna
Absolutely.
start. I'm gonna start
Well,
with
hang
kind of
on.
a layup since it won the Grammy for Album of the Year in 2013. That would be Daft Punk with Random Access Memories, and this is a really good album. I mean, yeah, we all know "Get Lucky" with Pharrell Williams was like the inescapable song of the summer. If you remember 2013, everywhere you went, from a restaurant to Walmart, you would hear this song and it's a great song. It's a great groove, and that really is indicative of this album. Having listened to it again the other day, uh, it really taps into the zeitgeist of like that late '70s, early '80s, like disco electronica stuff. It kind of taps into like some of the synth stuff that Donna Summer was doing back in the '70s with "I Feel Love," and and then hints of Kraftwerk, and then the guest vocals that they bring in. Obviously Pharrell Williams, but and Nile Rodgers laying down the bass line on that. But then Panda Bear comes in and drops this song. Gosh, and I can't remember the song title. Let me just pull that up. Doing it right. The Panda Bear's vocals sound very Beach Boy like. This very Beach Boysy cadence. And then the biggest surprise of them all, Paul Williams from the '70s winds up singing this song called Touch. And you're sitting there going, it's Paul freaking Williams. This guy hasn't done anything since Smokey and the Bandit, and here he is on Random Access Memories. It's such a cool surprise, and this album is just one cool surprise after another. Just great mix of funk, electronica, and really well put together. It's a really enjoyable listen. It's a great groove all the way from first track to last track. So that's my first one.
That was a good album. Paul Williams, wasn't he a staple of Hollywood Squares?
No, you're thinking of Paul Lind.
Oh man, I'm getting my
Completely
70s
different.
Pauls.
Yeah.
70s Pauls are getting mixed up.
Well, Paul Williams might have
Um,
been in his Hollywood Squares. I got to go on the YouTube rabbit hole and check out old
I know, right? Yeah. Well,
videos.
after we record this, we're all going to be up until 2 in the morning individually at our houses
No.
watching old Hollywood Squares episodes on YouTube.
Well, you know,
Those are those are both great albums. That Riverside album is one of my favorites.
yeah.
And that Daft Punk, that's a really good one too. Now, I don't know their catalog super well, but it is that their last album or was their last album more like 2016?
That was their last album. Yeah.
That was the
2013. They
last
won
one.
Grammys, they won album of the year, and then they're gone. So they took off their helmets, and I said, yeah, and who knew that they were Simon and Garfunkel under there? That was really weird.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, see?
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Are they one of the ones where they hate each other?
Oh, they absolutely hate each other. Yeah, that'll be a future episode, like bands like, like diss tracks and stuff like that. Because, yeah, Paul Simon wrote a diss
Nice.
track to Art Garfunkel while they were still Simon and Garfunkel.
Yeah.
And there's a whole story on that. But anyway, tell me
Yeah.
about your album.
Well, so my first pick is an album by Haken, prog metal band Haken. It's their third album and it's called The Mountain. And largely considered by some to be one of their best. For some people, it's their absolute favorite. For me, that might be Visions, just because of that epic track. Where, yeah, that was where I was like, okay, they fully realized their sound, even though Aquarius was a good debut. But The Mountain, yes, okay, Atlas Stone. So Atlas Stone was is a ringtone on my phone. I think that's the ringtone for when my son calls me. And then Cockroach King, which they can't really get away with playing live, right, without some sort of nod to Cockroach King. Um, but yeah, this is just a pretty amazing album. Fully formed Haken, and some of their best moments are here. And yeah, I looked back and I was like, wow, that's 10 years old and it's their third album. So, I don't know if you guys still think of Haken as a relatively new prog metal act, but that's just not the case anymore.
Yeah.
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 So hey, that album was again, it's like similar to the Riverside. That was my entry point to Haken, and seeing the Cockroach King video with the puppet homage to Queen kind of conceptually in it was just, you see that visual and you're going, okay, I need to know more about this wacky group because
Yeah.
something's fun's happening here. And yeah, they deliver, and they've been delivering since then. So yeah, John, excellent choice.
Yeah. Yeah. Check it out. Everybody out there. If you haven't heard that one yet, it's going to go down. I mean, here we are 10 years later talking about it. It's going to be talked about 20 years from now. It's a great album.
One quick thing about that, the keyboards in there's parts where it very much sounds like an organ from church. Like it has that very kind of cathedral ambiance with some of the keyboards, which is a really nice touch. It really sets a really good atmosphere, a good mood on some of these tracks.
Yeah, and that's cool that you say that too, because that is another thing about Haken is it's a really nice sounding album, really well produced.
Yeah.
All right.
All right,
Dave.
so I'm gonna jump in on my next one here, and I intentionally wore my Dream Theater shirt, just not for not for that album though, because it was their 12th studio album that came out 10 years ago, and it's the self-titled album. It was the second one they did without Mike Portnoy. The first one where Mike Mangini is actually fully involved with the writing as opposed to just simply playing the music. So you get more of his influence within it. Interestingly, shorter songs by and large, other than they do have, what was it? Illumination Theory, which is like a 22-minute epic because it's not a Dream Theater album without some extended, spectacularly long opus or something going on. But you had I think the primary single they put out for it, The Enemy Inside, that's still a solid go-to track. If I'm in the mood for a Dream Theater track, I'll go that regularly. I will still go to. So yeah, this was an excellent album. I think this was that again, so they're finding their footing, they're finding who they are without their founding drummer, and kind of getting a little bit of a new personality and kind of interestingly, yeah, I say stretching their legs a little bit, but interestingly, with the shorter structure to the songs, kind of experimenting perhaps a little bit in maybe tightening the structure or what have you. But yeah, so self-titled 12th album by Dream Theater is my pick number 2.
All right.
Pretty solid. It's pretty solid.
That's good stuff.
I really like the Illumination Theory as far as their epics go.
Yeah.
And I like it has a warm up kind of a thing, not really an overture, I don't think, but there's a moment where it builds to like the drop or whatever, and Mike Mangini's got a drum fill that goes on for like 8 bars or something. He has this ridiculous drum fill in there where I was like, okay, awesome. It's, because I think everyone knows by now, if you're a Dream Theater fan, that John Petrucci basically wrote all the drum parts for the first album because they were in such a time crunch, and Mike Mangini just kind of came in and played to some drum parts. But so this was really cool to hear him put his personality on this. He gets accused for not having one, but here it is. I thought this album was pretty cool in that regard, to really kind of get to hear Mangini's input.
It's awesome. So my second album is an album that it took a while for me to get into. It's Stephen Wilson, The Raven That Refused to Sing, and Other Stories. And I know it's kind of a tough listen to if you're familiar with Wilson's Porcupine Tree stuff. And I think this is his second solo, if I'm not mistaken. But at first it felt very impenetrable, but then you started listening to it more, and you kind of got like some of the elements of Wilson's stuff with Porcupine Tree, but just interpreted in a different way. You have like kind of the atmospheric song of like Drive Home. You have the choppiness, the punchy aspects of Luminal, the first track. And then the best song on the album for me is The Holy Drinker, which kind of like creates a lot of these different parts that really play onto, Wilson reaching into his bag of tricks and putting it together in this one cohesive song. And it, like I said, it didn't stick with me the first few times I listened to it. I had to listen to it for a while, but once it clicked, it really clicked. And now it's kind of turned into my go-to Wilson solo album, which is kind of weird.
Oh, really?
Because on paper, I like some of his other stuff. I like the 2 albums better that he released later on following this album from a music standpoint, and it has definitely better music moments. But for whatever, this one speaks to me more as a cohesive narrative, music-wise. And so I really dig it. So there you go.
Yeah, that's a great choice. And it's interesting to me. It's interesting because here's an artist where what he's doing now doesn't sound anything like this album.
Right.
And this album, its album is only 10 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I also think that Wilson is, during the pandemic, I mean, he said this before, he's been influenced by other sources. And I think you're going to see a lot of more of Wilson doing music for Wilson and not for Wilson fans. And it's going to be interesting to see how his new album is received. Because sometimes
that's a little bit of that's a little bit of who he has always been, and I think the more he is at home with or given the reins to just kind of go and do, the more he's just going to say, you know what, I'm going to explore what mood I'm in the moment, wherever musically I'm feeling at the moment. And he's in the position at this point. He's succeeded well enough that, in a sense, musically, he's got a blank check to write, and he can just go. And honestly, yes, at times for the older fan, we kind of look at it and go, oh, come on, but why couldn't you do? But he's not playing to us. He's playing, it's music for himself to some degree, I think.
Yeah. But honestly, if like you were able to be that chameleon, and some of the best artists are like that, like Elvis Costello, Beck, Bob Dylan. I know y'all aren't Dylan fans, but you can't deny that Dylan, shifts genre throughout his career, and he was kind of successful with that. And that's really kind of cool to see Wilson exploring this and really exploring his love of different genres and different music. I mean, he wrote a freaking ABBA song essentially on on To the Bone, and it's a fantastic song. So there we go.
Yeah.
All right, John,
Yeah.
what's number 2 for you?
My second one is Spock's Beard's Brief Nocturnes and Dreamless Sleep. This is album number 11 for the Beard, but this one is really interesting because it's the first one after Nick DiVirgilio left the band. So he was the drummer there when Neil Morse was in the band doing most of the composing. And then when Neil Morse left, then Nick came out from behind the drum kit like Phil Collins to become the lead singer. Now the band is having to write their music without Neil. And Neil was a real composing force for that band. So the writing became much different. It almost sounded like a different band when Nick took over. And they even brought in some outside help. And what's interesting is that this album then becomes the first one with a new lead singer, Ted Leonard. Ted Leonard comes from Enchant. He's also currently now the lead singer in my Pattern Seeking Animals. And so Ted is really kind of coming out and doing some fun projects. And he's excellent on this album. He totally pulls it off. I have a hard time really appreciating Ted, his voice on the old Enchant records. But he has really grown as a vocalist. And here we are, this is already 10 years ago, and he blows it out of the water. And then they bring in the drummer, Jimmy Haken, who was their touring drummer then, that they had with them for when Nick was being out front on stage singing. And they really, I don't know if it was just that Nick had to leave, but the band is absolutely reinvigorated on this album. And this is, if you look at Prog Archives, I believe this is the highest rated Spock's Beard studio album behind only maybe V. So this one's my favorite Spock's Beard studio album. Absolutely. So spend some time with it if you haven't already.
Yeah.
All right.
That's an excellent choice.
Yeah, that's a really good choice.
Just I mean, I just can't believe it's 10 years old. It's the new singer, right?
Right.
Yeah.
The new singer. I'm more, and you kind of nodded to this. Yes. So I listen to a bunch more Enchant than you tend to. So I have a little more appreciation of Ted, where he comes from, but you're right. There's a big jump in his ability. There's a jump from what he did in Enchant to what he starts doing with Spock's Beard. I think they're 3 albums in, I think, with Pattern Seeking Animals, and I think there's another one in the works or on the way, and they're killing it. So I think Ted has really come into his own as a vocalist, and I know Neil has used him on some side project related stuff too. So it's kind of fun to watch the interworkings and the Prague family kind of swap folks around and whatnot, and let's keep moving all the parts around, and because that's how Prague works, right? That's pretty much
right.
Wheel of band members,
right? And when you talk about swapping players, it's worth noting on this album that Neil Morse is involved. He helps compose 2 of the tracks, and then even I think plays some guitar or a guitar solo on the big epic at the end. So this is a really exciting album, I think, for old Spock's Beards fans as well as those that are newer to the group, saying, "Who's this? What's this new group about?" So check it out. Dave, what's your third one?
All right, so my third pick. So I talked about Dream Theater post Mike Portnoy, so now I got to play with what's Mike been doing since then. And so 10 years ago, what's he doing? Well, he's putting together and releasing an album with a new band, a trio this time with the Winery Dogs, where he pulls Billy Sheehan, who had kind of played in the past with Mr. Big. He did stuff with Steve Vai on occasion. He was part of David Lee Roth's band back in the day. If you go back even before that, he had a band himself that he was in called Talus. That if you want some obscure, fun Billy Sheehan fandom there, you can kind of go back. They released something somewhat more recently too. That's the fun of everybody reconstituting their bands again. But so you've got him and you've got Richie Kotzen, who I was not familiar with prior to that, but he also had a stint with Mr. Big a little bit. Did some stuff with Poison. He's done a wide variety of things. He does a lot of solo work himself. So you got Richie on vocals, playing some guitar, Sheehan, Billy doing bass, and of course Mike doing his thing as the drummer and backup vocalist, and all around fun. Let me put 15 different bands together kind of a guy. Really kind of a fun, kind of bluesy flavor to the album. Really loved. I think this was when they came out. I went, Rich, did I see that? Was it with you that I saw?
Yeah, we saw that at the Coach House in Orange
it was
County.
the coach. Yeah,
Yeah.
great show. I mean, they put on a great show, solid album. They're three albums in as well, but just love this one and just love another expression of Mike Portnoy and his variety of albums and bands and so forth. So yeah, so that was the debut of the Winery Dogs for me is pick number 3.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that was really, if you're just familiar with what Portnoy did with Dream Theater, Winery Dogs is such a departure sonically from that. And I think for people that aren't familiar with that, it may take them a little bit to get into that album, but you have to come into it and say, this is not Dream Theater, this isn't prog, really.
No, he migrated. So he did before this, he had the Adrenaline Mob, which was much more straightforward metal, but that's much more, take the prog out and do more of the metal. Now he's switching gears into the Winery Dogs and throwing something bluesier together. So yeah, you're kind of seeing the different flavors of his musical talents in the different constructions and the different bands that he puts together.
Yeah, no, it's really good.
Yeah.
So my third album is Queens of the Stone Age, like Clockwork. And I would have to say this is probably my favorite Queens album. It is definitely the one I listen to the most. There's a quality to it that just sounds kind of like the Joshua Tree National Monument, just kind of sparse and kind of just desolate and just kind of badass. And I think, and that makes sense because, I mean, Josh Homme comes from Palm Desert, so that era, so he really captured that ethos of that kind of sound. And this was the album, I think, that really fully formed the band after Nick Oliveri and Mark Lanigan left, because you had them making significant contributions on stuff like Songs for the Deaf. And this one, I mean, there was an album before, Lullabies to Paralyze, but on this one, this really feels Homme completely in control of what this band sounds like. And I think that's why it sounds very, high desert weird. And it's just really cool. I mean, just a couple years ago, I camped at Joshua Tree. And I mean, every time I would have to walk down a path to go somewhere, all I could think of was My God's the Sun, which is that great riff, that that, and that just really makes you feel like, yeah, I'm going to the bathroom and I feel like I'm the man, just, which is kind of weird to say, but yeah,
it's weird to hear.
This album's just great. I mean, it's so cool, and it has like one of the, I mean, yeah, there's just such great lyrics in there. I mean, the line, what's that? I got bruises and hickeys, stitches and scars, got my own theme music, plays wherever I are. It's like so cool. And it's like only a guy like Homme could like pull that line off and not sound like, make it sound cool instead of dorky. So yeah, there's my pick.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's good stuff. All right. Well, my last one, I don't think you can get this in a physical form anymore. You'd have to go to his website and get it digitally, I think. Don't even think it's on streaming services. But I'm going to talk about Eric Gillette. So Eric Gillette is currently the guitar player for the Neil Morse Band. And then he's also got a brand new project that's coming out, I think, this month. Dave, help me with the name. Is it Temic?
Yeah. Yep.
Like Temic?
I believe so, yeah.
something like that. And Eric is an absolutely amazing guitar player. And if any of you were familiar with the 50th birthday party thing that Mike Portnoy did, where he did the entire 12-step suite of the Dream Theater songs, it's a really cool thing. And when Mike Portnoy was putting a band together, because he had already left Dream Theater at this point, he had always dreamed of playing the entire hour-long thing all at once. And so for his 50th birthday, he put a band together to do that. Most of his backing band on that was Haken, but he had Eric Gillette come in to basically be a little John Petrucci. And man, he killed it. So it's not officially released. I don't think maybe he can, maybe because of the legal stuff, maybe, but you can find it on YouTube. And Eric is amazing. Eric is amazing in the Neil Morse band. Just an absolute killer guitar player, super creative, emotive, really fun to watch as well. So anyway, 2013, he put out a little solo album. He officially has two that are they're sort of a mix of kind of Satriani shred songs and progressive rock. So on this album, there's 12 tracks on this album. It's called Afterthought. It's and 8 of those 12 tracks are basically instrumental, like Satriani-esque shred stuff. But there is a prog rock epic on here that's over 22 minutes long, and a great introduction into early Eric Gillette, which is already absolutely amazing. So then he got picked up 2 years later, or around this time actually, with the Neil Morse band, and in 2015 they came out with their first album. Before then, just slaying everyone with 2016's The Similitude of a Dream. So super talented guy. Go to his website, pay for the digital of this album, and the other prog rock one that he did that also came out in 2016. Super good stuff. So I would say the second album's better than this one that I'm talking about here, but we're celebrating the albums that are 10 years old. So
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So as we're on our way out, you guys got any honorable mentions that you almost thought about talking about? I'll just throw out there that I'll throw out there that One Direction had a huge smash album out in 2013 that I actually like. So there's an honorable mention there.
Oh, actually, one of the albums I was kicking around was Days Are Gone, Haim's debut, because it's very much sounds like a very 80s throwback, and very talented sister trio. Really, really good stuff.
Yeah.
I toyed with 2 others, Leprous, Coal, which would have been another interesting one would have thrown in there. And the other one, a band from Maryland, kind of a hard rocker, Clutch, and probably my favorite of theirs, Earth Rocker.
Oh yeah,
it kind of has a very fun looking. What am I now? My kind of psychedelic, almost looking cover, but it's a lot heavier. It kind of gives a different feel on a cover than the actual music does. But Clutch, I think that's one of their better albums.
Oh my gosh! And look at this. Okay, I got another honorable mention. Two by Unknown Mortal Orchestra. This album, it's freaking good, man. I discovered this like about maybe 4 years ago. And I probably listened to it like once a week for like a year straight.
Wow.
It's good. It's indie, but it's great voice, some nice guitar work. Just great atmospheric stuff. It's really freaking good. In fact, can we re-record this, because I want to include that in the 3. So
let's do a whole do-over on the whole episode.
Yeah, call a do-over. There we go. All right.
Well, and hey, let me throw this in here. If you're watching this and you've got things that you're thinking, hey, I wish they would have mentioned, or hey, here's one that I'm surprised by. Yeah, throw a comment. I would love to hear and see what you guys are thinking, or what kinds of albums surprised you, or maybe a favorite from 2013 that you're just going, this just still kicks it.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the genres that we spoke of, because I know we kind of
No,
lean
true.
heavy into the prog and metal side. But if you find something that's pop or indie that you want to mention, it's like, hey, this is a great album, go for it. I mean, especially, we may not be as familiar with that album that you really love, and we would love to hear about that.
Yeah. And give us a like and a subscribe if you wouldn't mind. If you like what we're doing, that'd be awesome. Thanks for being here. This was a lot of fun.
All right, have a good night now.
Yeah, we'll see you
All
next time. Bye bye.
Mm-hmm.